I've been working with 80/20 every day for the last 4 years. I've learned a few things. The first thing I'm going to tell you is going to save you a lot of heartache. Get yourself the good tools. The good tools are the way to go. Believe me, when I started, I used to use regular socket sets with the hex socket on the end, and I thought they were okay. They wear out. That's one problem. They're big and bulky, and they don't always fit in where you need them, okay? The good tools are well machined, they're well made, they fit perfectly, and believe it or not, you use a different tool for each part of the assembly of one fitting. You don't just use this or this for the whole job. When you're assembling, you start with this one. Then, if you have to, you move on to this for torque. And if you can get this in, this is where you tighten it down for good. I started with this type of a socket. Very simple, it's logical, right? You see these everywhere, they're in the store. And this is a regular socket, and it has a hex head on it, or hex nipple. That's right, I said nipple. This fits into the hex bolt from 80/20. It has a squared off tip to it, okay? That becomes a problem unless you are absolutely perfectly in line with the bolt. If you're up at all in any, see how that gets stuck in there. If you're up at any type of an angle, like you would be when it's in the socket. See, I can't get this to be straight in line because of the socket tool. That's a problem. You strip out your bolts. Okay, so then the next step was put an extension on it. With an extension, you can come at it from a lesser angle, right? Sure. And that works to a certain degree, but you don't always have this kind of room to get a wrench in here. You may have another profile right here. Problem. That's why I moved over to these better tools. This tool is how I start every assembly. It has a round head on it. It's got a little, I don't know if you can see that. I have to do a close-up. There's a little round head on there. There, that's how you can see it. And that allows for some variation in angle and still maintain full contact inside that bolt. So this tool, if I have the room, is the first tool I use to do an assembly of a fitting. This is how I get it together. If I don't have room because of other profiles, then I go to the smaller tool. I'll either use it this way or I can come in this way. So I'm pretty well covered to be able to get this fitting in place, whether there's another profile here or not. So if you're just going to make a simple 90-degree connection like this, it becomes difficult to get this lined up and do everything else you need to do. This thing can spin, and you go in this way, and that way you could fall short, you could be over too far. So get yourself a cutoff, and bring a cutoff in here. Now you can hold it in place if you're just doing a basic assembly and you're not locking down or squaring up yet. And that's nice and flush now with a stand-in. All right, so now I'm going to take this assembly to the next step. You do a loose fit, okay? You get everything in, including preloading any T-nuts you're going to need for a future assembly. Then I come in here with a couple of F-clamps, and I very light tighten, not too tight, just enough to hold it in place. Then we come in with our squares. Ron made these up on the CNC, and these have proven to be really helpful tools for us. All of these areas here are where you can add clamps. When you make a profile connection like this with an elbow, there's a corner bracket, we call them elbows. It takes this off of 90 degrees slightly. So you have to make sure that you keep your box square. And in doing so, see, now this is square. We know that's square. And to complete the box, I'd put another one on the other side. Now this one's too big because I've got a 45-degree support in here. So we're making smaller ones. So we're still in the testing phase with this, but I think once we're done, we may print out several dozen and we'll get those to you guys. All right, caddy corner, okay? Side by side, not necessarily square, but when you put these squares caddy corner from one another, you know your box is square. Okay, now you're ready to begin assembling and tightening all this down. Now we come back in here with this cutoff, and I can put that cutoff right there and put a clamp on it. Okay, now I know that this and this are flush on this outside because the profile is helping us. Something else that you want to understand is when you're using these single nut connections, these profiles can swivel. So periodically go around and keep them flat. Then you can tighten up your F-clamps. Now you're ready to start tightening down on these screws. But I'm going to tell you something about that. Word of caution when you're assembling and adding one of these little elbows to the profiles, you're making your shape. I left this exaggerated space between the elbow and the profile so you can see if you don't tighten these properly. In other words, you want to force this elbow into the corner equally on each profile. And the problem arises if you try to tighten up one and then the other. What you want to do is tighten this one till you get slight resistance, then come over here and tighten this one till you get slight resistance, then come back here and do this one, and then come back here and do this one till they're tight. And what that does for you is it maintains equal pressure. It seats this elbow right into that corner where it belongs. There's no little gap here because you tightened here first, and then when you came here, you can't get it all the way tight because you already got this one locked in. It won't slide down. So you need to tighten up these two bolts simultaneously, one then the other, with equal light pressure until you get them tight. Once you got them seated, then you come in with the beast, and you can give them some real torque. So now when you're assembling your frame members and you're designing, it's important to consider load transfer, structural integrity to these pieces. I've seen some people where they assemble these things and they're using profile pieces where they really don't do much in terms of structure and load transfer. What I mean by that is this is a frame member for the bed for the Mini-Me. There's going to be a person sleeping in that bed. All that weight of that person is transferring down through the frame to the floor, which is the most solid structure in the van. You want to transfer all your weight down to the floor through any frame member. So here, the weight across this frame is being transferred down directly. This is on top of this, and this is on top of this. So the load transfer, the weight transfer goes straight down through to the floor. In other words, this is how I've got it now, where the load, this is on top, and this whole thing is pressing on that one. If I did it this way, this does virtually nothing. Imagine if this were loose, it doesn't offer any support. All of your support would be just on this one leg. This does nothing. It's hanging on the side here. You don't want to ever have any supports hanging. The supports always want to be sitting on the next profile to send that weight down to the floor. You got your box made, you got your rectangle, all of your elbows are seated nice and tight and proper like, and it's square. You want to add in one of these 45-degree supports. These offer incredible strength, lateral strength and support to your frame member, okay? If this was just a four-sided assembly, it would wobble. It would just go back and forth. Adding just one of these makes an incredible difference. It just locks it into a 90 and you don't get that wobble. Okay, these come in a couple of different sizes, right from 80/20. I like to use the 6-inch and the 12-inch. Again, we don't have a lot of space in vans, so you have to use smaller items. You can also use what they offer. This is called a gusset. And a gusset is just a small triangle. You would use this in place of an elbow. It offers a lot more strength than an elbow. It uses 4 T-nuts instead of 2, like an elbow. And when do you use them? It's a matter of space and how much support or strength you need. But these, ideally, you'd like to put 2 of these in a structure. In a frame like this, 2 of these would be ideal. You can't always do that. So you make do with what you have. In this case, this section is out in the aisle. This is the part of the bed that's in the aisle. This is the part of the bed that's going to be attached to the wall of the van. So if you're attached to the wall of the van, you've got support this way. And this is going to offer you support out here, away from the wall. The next step is when this is inside the bed, it's how do we stop it from flopping this way? Okay, so we've got this triangle in place, and that keeps this thing from wobbling this way, east to west, in the van. That takes care of this. But now we got to take care of this. And when you have a structure on the end like this, this is the garage in the back of the bed, that's going to create a good deal of support. But each of these legs is still floppy. These are still going to be floppy this way, okay? You need some triangles, okay? 6-inch, 12-inch, or a gusset. Gusset. Depending on what your parameters are. In this instance, this side of the bed faces the aisle, so it has to be open. These openings cannot be encroached upon by any gussets or these 45s, because I need to get my laundry baskets in here and my toilet. So these are the constraints of design when you're thinking about how to build this out. So we've got all of our weight transferred down, right? We got all our elbows nice and tight. Now we've got to work on this flip-floppiness. We got it this way with the triangles. I can put any triangles inside this area because that doesn't impede on the alleyways. We got to keep the alleyways free. So we can't do this here, but we can do it in the back against the wall. So that's what's going to happen back there. Up front, there's a chance we can use a gusset, and the toilet will still slide and clear that gusset, and that'll offer some support. We also screw these down into the floor, 3/4-inch plywood floor. All of these get screwed down to the floor, and it becomes a rock-solid unit. It's incredible how well this works. The other thing you want to make sure you do in your design, you see the way I've got these things designed? I can move any of these leg systems up and down in order to accommodate, what is it? Is it the toilet? Is it the laundry basket? So I don't have to disassemble my whole thing here because I thought ahead in that initial design process, and I know that I'm going to have to tweak these in some fashion. Or if the design changes, the customer says, I don't want your stupid laundry basket, I want something else. No problem. We just loosen this and we bring it in. All right, now let's try to make some sense of all these 80/20 fasteners. Let me get this drawer box out of the way. This is the galley for the Mini-Me. And we've already covered our elbows. Call them elbows. They are an inside corner fastener. They use 2 T-nuts, 2 T-nut kits, a bolt and a T-nut, a bolt and a T-nut. I cannot use this corner fastener in this particular situation because we are going to be insetting our drawer faces. We are not face mounting. If we were face mounting these drawers, as I've done in some vans, I could use this. My drawer will slide right past that. It doesn't get in the way. But when you are going to flush mount or inset these things, you've got to keep this opening clean. Now, the drawer box, the drawer faces go all the way across. I'm just using this piece of wood for demonstration purposes. So what do we do here? Well, on this side, we use an L bracket. It's sitting right back here like that. I'm going to bring this out front to show you what I'm talking about. So I've got 3 T-nuts here. I only use 2. 3 is not necessary. So I use this one, and then these 2 go into this piece. So I'm connected, and it's a very strong square connection. I love it, but I never use that center hole. It's unnecessary. 2 and 2. Now, why did I mount this L like that as opposed to like that? Well, that's where design comes in. You got to try to think ahead. If I mount it like this, in the future, on the back side, I'll be able to get at these screws this way. If I mounted it this way, I could not get at those screws because the water tank's in the way. I can't get a wrench in there. So you need to think ahead. When you present yourself with an option of which way to mount something, think it through. Don't just mount it willy-nilly. Think about the repercussions of your decisions. That's vocabulary toilet paper. I have it in the bathroom. Okay, so that's this corner. Here, we've got a down, a vertical, and 2 horizontals coming in. So here, instead of an L, we use a T, okay? And again, this is on the back side. It's mounted right there, just like that. I'm showing you here out front. So now 1, 2 in the vertical, and 1 and 1 in each of these. And we carry that across. Now these will always maintain plumb across because they're being mounted on the same. And again, same thing. If I flip this over, I could not get at these screws once that tank goes in. So you got to think about that. T's and the L shapes are when you want to mount flush inset, right? But when you're mounting proud face mount, the elbows, the small 2-hole elbows are perfect for that. And you put them where you need them, and then you can blind fasten this from the rear. Just make sure, as I said, that you leave yourself access for a wrench. Down here in this corner, we do not have access with the wrench. So this is going to be a little bit of a different mount where we through bolt from out in the front, and we put a nut back there, a fixed nut. So in all of these 80/20 galleys, you'll see one little screw head down here with a finish washer. And next we've got the 2-hole bridge plate, right? Look at them, they're everywhere. I use these in the front of this garage on the Mini-Me. This is an open compartment, and then it's open in here. This is going to have an inset panel of, what is it? This is going to be white oak. This inset panel is black ABS. Same thing on the sides. So I could not use my elbows. I can't use a T or an L back here because I've got pieces running into the back, which I did not have over on that side. So this wouldn't work. So I've got to come out front and work with these. Now, I made a decision. If you get some 4-channel pieces and some 3-channel pieces, you'll have one smooth side. So my smooth side is where your hands would go. You're going to reach in here to get something. It's smooth. I left all of these channels open for the future. With roll-in or drop-in T-nuts, we can add any of these fittings to the front of this and do something in the future. So in this case, on the front, I could have used L's, right? I could have used T's right here. And I did that. And when I looked at it, it looked like some kind of a gulag contraption. It looked scary. So there's an aesthetic that comes into play when you decide what kind of fittings you want to use. Imagine this thing loaded up with all these T's and L's and all these black T-nuts. So you minimize. Now these are a little bit difficult to maintain square as you're assembling. You've got to put your square pieces in, clamp them real tight, and then you can see this one's a little crooked. This one's crooked the other way. So there are some downsides to using the two-hole because it pivots. If you had three-hole, it wouldn't pivot as easily. So now the three-hole, we've got a three-hole elbow as opposed to the two-hole elbow. See that? This is incredible. I built this entire garage separate, and I was able to then connect it to the bed frame using a three-hole elbow right here in each corner. Here's the three-hole elbow in use. See it? It's right here. And what I was able to do is connect this support to this piece on my garage, and then I took the whole thing and put it up against the bed, and I can attach it to the bed in these 4 points. And so now, again, separate. If somebody said to me, let's take the garage off, I don't want that, I want something else, fine. It's not integral to the bed design. They are separate components. The garage and the bed are separate, and then they're structural on their own, and then they come together with a three-hole elbow in each of the 4 corners. The primary use in this shop for the two-hole bridge plate is to use it as a pickup. By pickup, I mean, you see they're all mounted in here, all around the perimeter, and that allows us to be able to mount this panel. And we can mount it from the back through these bridge plates, right? Look how nice that is. And the way this works with the 1-inch 80/20, the Series 10, and 3/4-inch dimensional architectural plywood, when you press that in flush to the bridge plate, it leaves you with this beautiful reveal of the 80/20 and then the oak. So these are the little aesthetics that make one job look better than the next. This is a face plate. This is where my breakers and my fuses are going to go. This is a drawer that's under the inverter. This is going to be a ventilation grill for the inverter, USB, battery, button. So that's what these two-hole bridge plates are really good for, and the primary use in my shop. Nick taught me a trick. Nick used to work for me on weekends years ago in the old shop. When he was wrenching together these 80/20 components, the T-nuts, when you slide them into the channel, they don't stand up perfectly perpendicular to the screw. So you have a hard time getting the thread. So Nick came up with a trick. He got a little thin wire and he bent it into this type of a shape. And what you do is you slide that wire behind the T-nut. And you can do this anywhere there's a T-nut. And now that T-nut is perpendicular to the screw, and it allows you to get your thread going. And you can do that anywhere there's a T-nut. You can bring this in and straighten up that T-nut to attention and put the bolt, let the threads catch. This is a valuable, valuable tool, and I keep them in my apron. I keep them in the screw bin, the nut bucket where the screws are. They're everywhere because they come in very handy. Every single time we have to put in a T-nut that's in a vertical channel like this one, that's what you have to do. I will sometimes get the screw into the hole, just line it up on the hole, and then get my wire behind it, and then get it out just in time that you don't tighten it in there. Great little tool.